Hi everyone, my name is Owen Murphy. I am co-founder of the Sales Circle, where we help people with no tech experience break into tech sales job, which gives them the capacity to have a much higher earning potential as well, and much more clear trajectory in their career growth going forward in one of the fastest growing industries out there, and one of the most lucrative industries out there. And one of the people we've been working with over the last while has been Brian. Brian's joined us at the start of November, and within 38 days had landed his job in Sydney, Australia. So just to literally get people to, I suppose, know you small bit, Brian, just like, who are you? A small bit of background on yourself and where are you working at the moment?
Yeah, no worries. I'm Brian. I'm 29. I'm from Mayo. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. My background was in solar sales. So that was between door to door and high ticket closing. And I've just started a role as an SME account executive at Zenville.
Nice one, nice one. And I suppose you mentioned there you had a background in solar sales, doing like door to door and things like that. So taking back to that time, Brian, what was it that made you think about when you were doing that? You felt like, okay, like I maybe need to move out of this and I'd actually take a look at tech sales as a good option.
Yeah, well, the earning potential there was actually pretty good, especially with the high ticket closing. The downside of it was I was on the road quite a lot. So I was driving all around New South Wales, basically selling solar B2C. So the whole idea behind changing to B2B was number one, I wanted to get sponsored in Australia. And number two was basically having the stability and the routine of having a 9 to 5 and an office job and basically being based out of one place.
And we were saying there even about the stability and being on the road all the time. Like, I suppose to even give some people a bit of context, like when you're saying you're being on the road, like, how often were you on the road? How many hours were you doing on a weekly basis, did you find?
Yeah, so I was working 6 days a week. On a weekday, you could be working from like 8:30 in the morning to 10 p.m. at night, depending on what your schedule was. And then as well, you're only back in Sydney at the weekends. So I could be 3, 4, 5, 6 hours drive away from Sydney. And then it's quite a lot of miles getting put up on the clock. But it was good. I enjoyed it. It was a great experience. But in terms of long term, I thought definitely a 9 to 5 would suit me a little bit better.
Yeah, 100%. And in terms of then actually looking at making the transition into tech sales, and I know from my background, like, landing a potentially sponsored role in Australia, especially in the industry you want to work with, is not easy whatsoever. And what was it, I suppose, made you think like, okay, where did you come across the sales circle, and what made you feel like, okay, this might be the good option for helping me make that transition over to where I want to be?
Yeah, well, I suppose it was the first time we chat was back in March actually. But the thoughts of getting sponsored then was I was torn between getting sponsored and going traveling. I ended up choosing going traveling. So I was in Southeast Asia for a while. When I was making my way back from Southeast Asia, I got in contact with you again just to make the process of basically getting a job and getting sponsored and all that little bit easier when I came back to Sydney. So I was going into my third year, which basically means I have to get sponsored this year or head back to Ireland. So that made the decision a little bit easier.
Yeah, 100%. Is that, yeah, definitely for some people who are planning on staying that good bit longer term in Australia, like the sponsorship it can be such a hassle. And when I suppose you joined into the sales circle, and it was, oh yeah, 38 days. I remember when you put in the message that you landed a job, we kind of ticked off all the goals in terms of like job landed before Christmas, you sourced an account executive closing role, and as well as that, you had that clear sponsorship path clear sponsorship path in Australia as well. Kind of taking off all those three goals even before Christmas. And having done that and doing it in such a condensed period of time of 38 days, what was it you feel kind of worked well for you, having gone through the sales circuit that allowed you to kind of achieve that?
Definitely reaching out to companies, like even the companies I was reaching out to that wouldn't sponsor, the feedback that I got from them was, we love the approach, we love the methods that you're using to basically prospect myself into their jobs. So a lot of them didn't work out and I didn't even have interviews with them because they didn't sponsor. But I'm kind of doing that pre-clearance as well before that the interview happens, so I don't waste any time on that. As well, going into the interviews, it was a lot easier. Say the skills that I didn't have going into the role. So in terms of prospecting on LinkedIn, email, that type of stuff, I had never done that before. So going into the interview saying, listen, I don't have direct experience in this, but I have done a course in it. So the gap is already for the most part filled. So I think that was it worked pretty well in my favor during the interview process.
Yeah, very good, very good. And you've put yourself in a position now. You just starting in the job in Zemble there, only a week or so ago. I suppose looking forward now into the future with your AE role landed, path the sponsorship, and everything kind of looking up that way, and as well reclaiming a lot of time in terms of your working, a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, reclaiming back a lot of time in your evenings, no driving, your weekends and everything like that. How is that kind of making you feel now looking into the year and I suppose the years even to come?
Yeah, exciting. Yeah, it's just the hard work begins now, I suppose. It's one of those jobs, the more you put in, the more you get out of it. So it's just kind of having that right attitude and always having the right inputs, and you will get the output in the end of it.
Okay, and just one last, I suppose, question, then Brian. We definitely want to people that are watching these videos to who maybe relate to your situation because we work with loads of people who come from sales backgrounds, but not necessarily tech sales, and making that transition over to tech sales is can be quite daunting at times. But if you were to tell someone who's watching this who's maybe in a similar position to you or 2 3 months ago, working in a different sales type environment, thinking about making the move to tech sales, what advice would you give to them in terms of actually making that step over?
Well, I suppose it's being honest with yourself in terms of where your skills are and where they need to be to kind of land that dream role. And then second of all is the time and resources and energy you're willing to kind of put in towards the job search. I probably would have been able to make get this role without the sales circle, but would I got it sort of before Christmas? Almost certainly not. Second of all is going into the interviews and stuff like that. I could have said, I have XYZ experience and I can learn the rest of these skills. Whereas in this case, I was going into the interview saying, look, I already have a fairly good basis in this, despite not having direct skills from previous roles.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And guys, I think like Brian is the perfect example there in terms of going out and landing one of these roles. Of course, it is possible for anyone to land one of these roles, but it's a question of how fast do you want to condense that time period down into? Like, can we do it in 38 days like Brian did, as opposed to maybe 4 5 6 months, and be in a position that in 4 5 6 months we're actually just in the role, absolutely smashing it up by that time, as opposed to still being in the position to land a role. Well, look, Brian, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing a bit of your story for people who may be in a very similar situation to yourself. Guys, if you're watching this and you feel like, yeah, geez, if Brian can do it, so can I'm coming from a door-to-door background or whatever background you're coming from. Make sure we click the link in the description below where you can go onto our website and read as many testimonials like Brian's as well, and see if maybe it is the right fit for you in terms of making the transition over and doing it so in the next 30 to 60 days. Have a good one, guys.